Hello there. It's been a while. Yeah. So the Kyle Rittenhouse case has been kind of ongoing, and some new evidence kind of came to light. I heard a little bit about it in the background there, and I was just kind of like, huh, neat. The Trash No State guys, however, were kind of all over themselves to do this, so they were very confused and very unfamiliar. So, to introduce myself a little bit, y'all know me mostly as Graveyard Shift. I've been referred to as Ad Hoc. Um, and I am a former 15 Whiskey for the U.S. Army. That is an unmanned aerial systems operator. That means I did fly UAVs, I did fly drones, I did all that fun stuff. That was years and years ago. I've kind of fallen out of that. But usually when I see UAV stuff kind of make the news, I kind of give it a little bit of interest there and I pay attention to it a little bit. So it kind of first came to my attention a couple days back. I think maybe Friday. I was kind of watching the news. I saw something about the Rittenhouse trial, and it said FBI aerial footage subpoenaed or something, and I'm like, huh, neat. Or maybe it was a YouTube video. I can't really remember what the full story was. But from what I recall, the FBI had apparently taken surveillance footage from the riot that was going on that Kyle Rittenhouse is on trial for. And apparently that somehow came to light, and I can't recall if it was, I think it was the prosecution, because they're the ones who generally use it, wanted to bring it to, wanted to use it as evidence against Kyle. And the FBI tried to cover it up, and the prosecution ended up getting it subpoenaed or something, and it was a really interesting thing. I'm like, huh, interesting. Now, I will note that it specifically says aerial surveillance, so there is no telling exactly what this is, but everyone's kind of convinced that it's an unmanned drone. I semi-agree with them, but in the same vein, I do want to be somewhat cautionary, because it could also refer to just like a police helicopter or something overhead. But like I said, I am not fully aware of all the pertinent details of the case, but in this instance, we'll go ahead and treat it as if it was an unmanned drone. And that's what the boys wanted me to talk about real quick. So we'll go ahead and dive into it real quick here. Pulled up a CNN FBI surveillance video, in this one here. This is really kind of shit. The video itself was really well done. I mean, as far as the surveillance footage is concerned, whoever was operating this camera, the payload operator, the absolute pro, phenomenal job. He keeps his angles wide. He keeps his videos long, so he can see everything that's going on. That's the hallmark of a professional operator. If he does zoom in, he doesn't zoom. He's not zoomed in for too long. But ultimately, you want to keep your eye on everything. So I'm going to go ahead and just play this video real quick for you. So you see person of interest 2 right around here. That's supposedly Kyle. And you can see right here, like that's Kyle right there, supposedly. I don't like the way they broke this up. It's stupid. I wish I could have gotten my hands on like the raw footage or something. Okay, so there's Kyle right there, and that's the guy that's supposedly chasing him. So we can see Kyle is running away, and that's the person chasing him right there. As you can see, it zooms out a little bit.
Is my response on the ones you've got there? Okay.
Alright, yeah, so that's fucking CNN for you. Wish they'd given me the real unedited footages. So that's supposedly what happened. Was that
in rural Iowa, Spurgeon.
No, we're not interested in that. What supposedly happened was that Kyle retreated from his attacker, and he was supposedly person of interest number 2, and person of interest 1 was hiding behind the cars there, and he kind of ran away. Again, I don't like how they chopped this up. I wish they had given us the raw footage, but that's kind of what's going on there. Now, I gotta show you this fucking clip I found because it's absolutely goddamn fucking hilarious. All right, so this is supposedly the prosecution kind of talking about this. Apparently, they pulled the FBI video. It's real fucking hilarious. Okay.
Noticed, if you look at the FBI FLIR footage, now I know this is really grainy and pixelated. I apologize for that. Unfortunately, the FBI lost the HD footage.
The FBI lost the HD footage. No, you dumbass. The operator didn't zoom in. Trust me when I say that it's grainy and pixelated because you're trying to zoom in with a different player. If the operator on the payload had zoomed in, you absolutely would have been able to make out the details on these people. But let's go ahead and keep it with this one rolling.
I can't imagine how or why that happened, but you'll notice something interesting
Bullshit.
here. If you take a look at this, you see that blob? Same exact sequence. You can see there's Rosenbaum all the way on the right, gives chase, starts chasing Rittenhouse. Now, earlier, before that, if I zoom in on this area, the blobs on the left are the Zeminski, the blob on the right is Kyle. That round circle on the right, in the middle, that round little blob of pixels, all of a sudden, boom, this white rod points out on the left of it. See? Boom. That white rod appears, that goes out and comes back down. That white rod goes out and is now pointing at the Zeminskis. What could that be? Well, it can't be the rifle unless you're going to tell me that the rifle somehow has the same body temperature and registers the same color on an IR camera as Kyle Rittenhouse's body, because the laws of physics don't allow that to be the case. Therefore, it's pretty obvious. At one point, he lifted up his arm and pointed, probably when he was saying friendly, 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 and trying to address the fire, before an armed man began to approach him and he was forced to retrace his steps before being chased by an even more aggressive man in Rosenbaum.
Now, while he is correct in that, I will give him props for at least being aware that the camera is in white hot, which is what it is right now, which means all the white blobs you see are high temperatures, and all the black blobs are the cars there. Those cars have clearly been there for a while. Like, they have cooled off significantly, and that's why they show up black. Now, one of the big things that people are kind of asking now is, like, what kind of aircraft could have done this? So, I'll kind of briefly go over some of the aircraft that, at least I'm aware of, at least have the capabilities for this one, and I'll break it down for you in a little bit here. So, first off, when people think drones, they usually think these small little RC drones with cameras. As you can see, that they're really not all that big. Like, there's one down here in the corner right here. He's got, his, it's kind of in his hand. The thing about these drones is that they don't have the length or reach to achieve what this drone did, and I'll show you in the pictures why. So first off, if you want to think of this as an unmanned drone, you got to throw all this out of the picture. Like, none of this is capable of what this aerial footage actually pulled off. Absolutely none of it. Now, I'm going to go ahead and get into some of the military stuff that I was familiar with back in the day. So first off, we have the Raven. This is the RQ-11 Raven drone, and this thing is actually a little bit bigger than your hobby drone right there. That thing's about 5 feet in with a length and width of the span itself. And it's controlled kind of the same way. Like you've probably seen, like in the movies, you got all the army dudes have got that futuristic wrist thing where they got like a computer on their wrist and they can see what all this is. That is real. The Raven has been in service for over 20 years now, and it's really easy to learn and use. Like, you can take your standard 11 Bravo infantry grunt, put him through a 2-week course, and he will know how to operate and fly a Raven drone. Now, still, the Raven drone itself doesn't necessarily have the endurance. It's more of a short-range thing, and it can't go very high. You're probably talking like about 300 to 500. I think the max ceiling for a Raven, from what I recall, just looking shit up real quick to kind of refresh my memory, is 500 feet. It is going to outclass any little RC hobby drone that's on the market here today. And it's going to be a lot better. Like, the camera on this thing would make a professional photographer drool. Like, that's how good the package is on this thing, and it only gets better as things go up. Now, again, this is kind of your hobbyist level stuff. The thing with the larger size drones that we're about to get into, like, those are professional pilots. These are people that have actually trained for this stuff and are actually certified by the FAA as licensed pilots. Now, first up is your basic bitch. This is the RQ-7 Shadow. Now, the reason I say why this is your basic bitch is because this is kind of the most commonplace recon drone that is used by the military today. It's basically got a 13-foot wingspan. It's about the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, but it only comes up to about your kneecap there. And here's a picture for reference. Here's a Shadow on the ground, and you can see how big it is compared to the things there. And here's another picture. You can see that's a guy recovering it off the runway there real quick. It's not that tall, but it is fairly sizable. It is fairly heavy, and it does require a catapult to launch. Like, this thing cannot just take off and land on its... It can land on its lonesome, but it cannot really take off. Here you can see... this is a Shadow just kind of on the catapult, getting ready to descent off. And, yeah, this thing gets flung with a lot of force. It can basically... Your average cruising speed for a Shadow is about 70 knots. You're looking at about 100 miles an hour. And this is what it comes in touchdown landing. It actually has a hook. It's basically kind of the same hook and net like you would find on an aircraft carrier, how they kind of catch the seats there. But this is your basic bitch recon. And this is probably about the class for the photo into and of itself. Now, in the same kind of weight class, you have... this is the Hunter. This is the RQ-5 Hunter. It's a dual prop plane. It's about the same weight class as the Shadow. It's a little bit bigger. It has a little bit more endurance into and of itself. But ultimately, it serves the same purpose. Both of these are strictly recon birds. They're not armed. They do have the capabilities of coordinating airstrikes. They can mark targets for other aircraft, but they do not carry a payload. They don't have the lifting power to carry a payload. Now, the one the boys were losing their minds over and what they really wanted to talk about, because this is kind of, when you think military drone, this is what people think about. This is the MQ-1 Predator. The Predator actually is capable of taking off and landing under its own power, as is the Hunter in and of itself, and it's bigger. It's a lot bigger. Like, this thing is about the size of, like, I'll say like an F-250 Ford truck, or like a Ram truck. That's how big these things are. And yes, they do have the rails. They are capable of carrying a payload, but they can also mark targets for their things as well. Now, these things are generally much bigger as well. They do have a much bigger endurance. They do have a much bigger range. But it's severely overkill for what the FBI achieved. Like, this thing has a flight ceiling that'll actually rival, like, small Cessnas and everything into and of itself. So it's much overkill. And then the newest kid on the block in the same weight class is the MQ-9 Reaper. It's a little bit, a little bit more upgraded over the Predator into and of itself, but it's in the same weight class. It can take off and land under its own power. It's also prop-propelled, and it does have the rails there for its own payloads that it can carry, and it can also mark targets into and of itself. It's got an updated avionics package, fuel injection, all that good stuff. But again, it is severely overkill for what it is to and of itself. Now, the top dog, and definitely overkill for this, the biggest UAV in the arsenal, and this is primarily flown by the Air Force as opposed to the other four, which are all under the jurisdiction of the U.S. Army, also flown by the Air Force. But this is the RQ-30 Global Hawk. The Global Hawk is the biggest one. It is strictly flown by the Air Force, and it is the exact same size as a fighter jet. That's how big this thing is. And this thing is fully capable of launching from the United States, making a round trip over to the Middle East, and back again without ever touching down. And it can hand off to local controls overseas, and then it can launch from over there. It can it can be controlled here in the United States and then land back over there into and of itself, or it can be launched here from the United States, go overseas, and come back again without ever touching down and carry out like a 2-3 hour mission. Like this thing is jet propelled and it can stay in the air. This thing is significantly overkill. Like seriously. Don't like this. You will never see this outside of the military ever. Same with the Reaper and the Predator. It's just overkill. When it comes to something like a local stateside sort of thing, the Shadow and the Hunter are definitely more of what's going on. Now, to wrap this video up real quick, this is a picture that the boys grabbed from the thing into and of itself there. Can't really zoom in much further than this. If this, you just kind of have to bear with it. I wish I could find a bigger one here. But this is the image that the FB that was captured from this thing here. And this is kind of what the boys really wanted me to talk about on this end. So I'm going to be honest. Like this particular screenshot, like this payload imagery, this is nothing I'm absolutely familiar with. And, I did some training with the Reaper. I was certified on the Shadow. And just this is nothing like I've ever seen, which is why it could potentially be a helicopter as well. But I'll go over some things real quick, so everyone else can understand. So right here, this is where the payload is looking into and of itself. That's where the crosshair is on the payload. So the payload operator is looking there. Over here we have a timestamp, and it looks like that's in UTC time. So that's like the Universal Zulu time that they're talking about. It's apparently 5 in the morning. This right here, this is the direction that the aircraft is moving in. So the aircraft is moving north. That's kind of confirmed down here. I don't know what high is. Armed. This probably refers to the laser designator. Most payloads are just cameras, and they do have a laser designator for when you're using when they're coordinating airstrikes or when they just want to mark targets on the ground. For the Shadow, it just kind of turns into a big red spotlight, so the infantry can kind of see what's going on, so if you target something like that as well. The exact bearing that it's flying right there, 003, so it's like almost direct north. And then you got here latitude and longitude, and it's in the whole minute, hour, minute, second time thing here. Now, this is the one thing I want to make specifically very, very clear. The reason why it's unfamiliar to me is because the military doesn't really use this kind of grid coordination. We use a standard GPS 6-8-digit grid coordinates because we have that capability. So this kind of right here signifies that this may not be entirely military. This may even kind of be a civilian package. It's really kind of hard to say. Now, this is the big deal that everyone's making a fuss about. This is basically telling the altitude of the aircraft. In this case, it is 8,937 feet. So that's almost 9,000 feet above sea level. You can't get this kind of altitude with that low-level RC drone type of thing. But this is an absolute comfortable altitude for the likes of the Shadow and the Hunter. So and this is actually about kind of the average altitude that you'll usually find over local flying aircraft. Things like ultralights, helicopters, small Cessna aircraft, Learjets and stuff like this. Like that's a very comfortable altitude. And especially when it comes to the Shadow and the Hunter, this is a very comfortable altitude. This is exceptionally low for things like the Predator and the Reaper, and if a Global Hawk will only be at this altitude if it's coming in for a landing or taking off. So that's how I know that things like the Predator, the Reaper, the Global Hawk, it's overkill. But this is a very comfortable range for the Shadow and the Hunter. And then over here you kind of got information just on what the payload in and of itself. This is where the payload's looking. It's being manually controlled. This is the direction it's looking. It's currently looking 265 westbound. Not sure what all the rest of this is. So that's kind of what the footage or the trial itself looks like through the eyes of a 15 whiskey UAS operator. So I hope I could kind of share a little bit of knowledge on that one in and of itself, kind of get some eyes on this one. For me, you know, we've known that drones were always going to be coming to the domestic law enforcement side, but still, though, I mean, this entire system is definitely out of local municipality. Like local municipality police, they might use stuff like the Raven. You know, this could also be taken from like a local municipality helicopter. The FBI was tapping into that feed in and of itself. But if this is an unmanned drone, this is not something you'll commonly find in local municipality police. Like, if there was riot police on the ground, that was part of like the Kenosha Police Department, they probably had no idea that this thing even existed. I wouldn't even be surprised if the Kenosha Police Department was even aware of this. But I will state one thing for the record, because it's at this altitude. If this is an unmanned aircraft, and I believe that like Kenosha does have a regional airport, that airport was very much aware that this thing was in the AO. Like this, it was very much aware of where this thing was, and it has to be because, you know, low-flying drones, even at the size of a Shadow of a Hunter, you can still have like nasty mid-air collisions, and so, you know, they have their own avionics package which broadcasts their flight number, their all that good fun stuff that local regional airports, that their radar would keep track of this sort of thing, specifically so they can avoid that kind of collision. You know, otherwise ATC, that's kind of negligent on their part, and air traffic control, they're very serious about their jobs. Like, aircraft safety is no joke. And the FAA gets involved, and this would definitely be something like the FAA would be involved if it was a low-flying thing. So, whatever this is, if this is not like a manned helicopter or something, and even, you know, even I kind of, just from seeing the snapshot video, it's good. I don't really want to say it might be a helicopter. It might be a helicopter, might not. But, you know, this is definitely something that if it is not a helicopter, this is not something the local municipality had. Like, this is state level, this is state level tech. All right, well, I promised Tom I'd make this video short, and we're running about 22 minutes, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I hope you all kind of enjoyed this kind of look through the eyes of a UAV operator and what I could share, and kind of put things in perspective for people who are kind of curious about what exactly is going on. All right. Yep. Peace. I'm out.